President Biden walked off of his interview with MSNBC's Nicolle Wallace yesterday while they were still live on air. Let's take a look.
Well, and the ones that didn't vote for your bills but run on them.
That's right.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nicole,
much.
I appreciate
it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction and analysis to everything we just heard.
Well, I guess the one positive there is that he didn't have an IFB in, so he didn't pull the chair with him as he left. But I've never seen anything like that before, Jessica. I think anybody who's ever done an interview on TV knows that you stay until the segment is over. It just seems like the latest example of Biden not really knowing exactly where he is.
Yeah, he looked like he really had to get up before he actually got up as well. And I'm not sure what the cause of this could be, right? They could have had someone who is, their producer or technical support say, the president's got a call, it's very urgent, he's got to go. And perhaps he heard as well in his earpiece, or someone was flagging him over, we have an urgent thing that you have to come and do, right? Presidents get pulled out of meetings all of the time when there's breaking and urgent matters. So it could have been a situation like that. I could see that being reality. The way it went down, though, and the frequency of Biden's gaffes, I'm not convinced that that's the only explanation there is here. Maybe he really had to go to the bathroom. Like, the guy is old. The way he urgently looked like he had to get up, I mean, hey, he's doing a good job, fulfilling his needs. If he just didn't want to be there and the vibes are off, I mean, protect your vibes, King. Get up and go whenever you want to go. But with Biden, I fear it's not about that, and it might be about his cognitive state.
Well, we did have that report out of the Vatican that Joe Biden might have had a little accident there, so it wouldn't be surprising that this was another incontinence issue, I suppose. But yeah, this is the latest in a line of gaffes, from the corn pop story to wandering aimlessly around a factory when he was supposed to be meeting with workers, to misreading the teleprompter and saying words like period and comma when he's obviously not supposed to, and having really explicit directions for all of his public appearances, such as stand here, talk now, read teleprompter, pose for photo. It just seems like over and over again, these things start to represent a pattern, right? And we start to get a picture of a president who is kind of struggling with his mental health. And I am not a doctor, so I try to be careful on my speculation. But when someone who is struggling from a cognitive decline constantly schedules all of their events in the morning and leaves their afternoons free, that's usually because they're suffering from some kind of early Alzheimer's or dementia, and they have what's, I believe, known as sundowner syndrome, where as the day goes on, they tend to lose their ability to reason and think properly. So this is something that the Biden administration has basically waved off as a conspiracy theory. But I think most American people view that these moments where he does something a little weird, says something kind of funny, and thinks something must be wrong here. And so I think it's kind of incumbent on the president's physician and the administration to be more transparent about his health. In a recent report, for example, I believe the president's doctor left out the fact that he has sleep apnea, which is something that can cause cognitive decline in people at a relatively younger age because they're not getting proper oxygen to the brain while they're sleeping.
Yeah, I think there are medical explanations for this, certainly. And I think everyone that watches these clips of Biden and tries to defend it and say, it's not really fair, it's low-hanging fruit, we shouldn't make fun of people for their old age. This is someone who's in charge of running the country. And I think we have to make different decisions when it comes to how old the people we elect to the highest office are, because the reality of the situation is that they can experience cognitive decline. We need to have some kind of a standard here. We're not in a world where people can become president and hide the fact that they are in a wheelchair anymore. It's a world where the cameras are always on them, and we can see the cognitive and physical or physical rather than fiscal, but the state of the president's health, and it matters. It really does. Would you want Joe Biden to run a hospital you are receiving services at? I certainly wouldn't. I just don't think he's someone who's equipped to make good decisions anymore. He's extremely detached from the ideas he argued for when he was a senator. Do people's minds change over time? Yes. But the way all of his speeches are so scripted, the way every single debate seemed rehearsed and like he had taken an Adderall before it, and there was such a difference between his mental state when he's on television versus when he's stumping around Iowa, I think tells me everything we need to know about how he is in very important high-level meetings he has to be in when he runs the country. You can't put up a front for the American people and do a bad job behind the scenes. I just think he needs to retire at this point, and it's very clear, and that's just not something I say because of this video, but because of all of the gaffes we've seen and from what I've heard personally from people who have met with him and his cabinet in the White House.
Yeah, and I remember the media trying to cover for this during the 2020 campaign by saying that Biden's gaffes were just a product of the fact that he had a stutter as a kid. And it was very obvious that that was not the case, especially considering Biden himself said that he overcame his stutter long ago and that it wasn't an issue for him anymore. So trying to chalk it up to this childhood stutter was pretty ridiculous. And the American people clearly agree that something is wrong. According to an NBC News poll from just a few days ago, there are 68% of voters who say that they have concerns about Biden having the necessary mental and physical health to be president, including 55% who say they have major concerns. Now, to be fair, about 55% of voters say they have concerns about Trump's mental and physical health, but only 44% have major concerns. So there's a stark difference here in the way people view Biden's physical health, and they simply don't think that he's fit to be president.
Yeah, I think that's really clear when you watch certain candidates' town halls versus others' media appearances like this one. When I watched Bernie Sanders do a very long town hall, it's pretty clear that he's speaking from the heart about these issues, or at least they are his own thoughts, and he's able to string them together in a very coherent and elaborate manner and describe policy solutions that address the issues we face in the country. That's what I would expect from a senator, from the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. That's also what I would expect from a president. And when we don't see it from a president, regardless of what their actual age is, there comes a point where it's just apparent. And to ignore that reality or call it a conspiracy theory, it's gaslighting from Democratic establishment officials.
Yeah, and we also have the same situation playing out with Dianne Feinstein in the Senate, where she's being wheeled around by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, even though she apparently has no idea where she is. She thought that she had never left the Senate when she had the shingles complications, but was gone for quite some period of time. At one point, when she was being wheeled around, she asked where they were going or where they are, and it's just very concerning. And you can also see, in the case of Biden, the way that he approaches media interviews in general. This was one of his first interviews in a very long time. I think in at least a year during his presidency. He very rarely gives one-on-one interviews with the press. And when he's doing press conferences, he only takes one or two questions, and he takes them from pre-approved media outlets who have apparently even provided the bulk of their questions in advance. This is a stark difference from what we saw under Trump, who had an unprecedented level of access with the media. And although President Obama didn't give very many interviews either and was not as accessible as Trump was, there was never any question that it would have been due to some cognitive deficiency, because when he did talk to the media or when he did read off of a teleprompter, it was clear that he was all there. So this is not just a question of one or two things that Biden's done or people wanting to be mean to him or saying this because they dislike him. It's just that the body of evidence makes it quite obvious that something is wrong.
Yeah, with candidates like Dianne Feinstein and even Nancy Pelosi, who has her daughter pushing Dianne Feinstein around in a wheelchair. It's like Dianne Feinstein was calling the Green New Deal kind of a waste of time, telling young activists, I've got it. I've been doing this for a long time. I know what I'm doing. Nancy Pelosi calling it the Green Dream or whatever. She knows what it's called. There were protesters with the signs saying Green New Deal occupying her office. She's read what the policy's called. And I just fear that when we have these old candidates, they don't care about policy issues that won't affect them, that they won't be around to live to hear the consequences of or feel the consequences of. And so that's a huge problem when you think about folks being in elected office as well. And Biden has a bad habit of answering those questions you mentioned from journalists while he's halfway out of the door. It's like his new move. And I think it's a bit of a metaphor. It feels like Biden is halfway out of the door. But we have more for you after this, more Rising.